where they would drink it. And when they drank the tea, to taste the tea, you've got to take it and so that it hits your back, that back part of your throat. A lot of tea tasters get, I don't think Sal got his cancer from that, because if he had, he would have gotten cancer of the throat, and he didn't. But they do sometimes get cancer of the throat, the tea tasters, because this hot tea is being thrown back into the back of your throat, and they don't swallow it. This is a gaboon. It's not a spittoon. It's a gaboon.
Oh my goodness.
And the tea is spat back into this. This, of course, is clean. The tea is spat back into this. And this was my husband's teapot. His teapot. Every tea taster had his own teapot. And he cooked his tea in there. Poured it into those little cups. See, there would be a lot of tea tasters from all different companies would come to the one company, and then he would have to go to other companies when they had their tea tasting thing. That was to bid on the tea of the company that's selling the tea, whether it was Lipton's or Red Rose or Standard Brands or Bromley tea. Because the British used to come over here, and they would make a lot of the those tea makers would send their tasters over here with their product, whatever they had. So you had a huge area of men who were top tea tasters. Sal was one of 11 in the United States as a tea taster that was of good worth, you know. So they would do that, and then they would pour the tea into here and out into the cup. And this was Mr. Sanborn's weight thing. They put the tea over here, and they had to have exactly the right number of grams so it would come down, and then that tea would go into here, from here into here, and they drink it. And but that is his. This was Sal's, and so was this kettle. And I am very lucky to have this original set of scales and stuff that started tea. And when I read through when I was reading through this tea book, I said, you know, you take all beverages, it doesn't matter whether it's coffee or tea or wine or whatever, and you just don't think about all of the work that goes into the basics, particularly tea and coffee, because that's stuff that's grown in the ground. The ground has to be absolutely the right kind of soil, and the weather has to be right kind of soil, and it has to grow beside the mountains. Where is it? Did you pass that on?
Well, I
didn't know. We were listening rather than mine again.
Yeah, we'll look at it. Yeah.
Okay, you guys can look at that. But where I have checked it off, you can see the mountains, and those were the Melange Mountains. And my brother lived right at the base of the Melange. He had his house and his everything at the base of the Melange Mountains, but he had 4,500 acres of land there, and so when he turned it into just growing the little tea plants, that became a very profit. That was more profitable for him than having the tea plantations, because he had all of these natives. Well, I don't know what to call them. These Africans that worked for him, and he housed them. He gave them a plot of land, because he owned so many acres. There's 4,500 acres, so there was a lot of land that was also in sort of semi-jungle, not really jungle, but you had to be very careful when you go through. The only thing that you had to worry about were the leopards. The leopards came down and lived on the Melange Mountains. That's where they lived. But in order to get food, they would come down. And so when you built your house, you made sure you had dogs. And my brother had 4 mastiffs. And they'd leave the window. I couldn't understand it for a long time. I said, "You've got leopards here and your windows are all open." He said, "Yes, of course." He said, "The dogs have got to get out." And they go swoosh, and you'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd say, "What's that?" And I'd wake up my sister, "Cynthia, what's that?" "Just the dogs. Go to sleep. They're out searching the compound." Oh, okay. So I felt like such an idiot, But having been told by all the stories from my brother that he had leopards coming down, and I was saying, that's all I have to do is to be eaten when I So, but the dogs would go and they'd jump through the way, and then they would walk around and they'd stalk the house. That was their job. All night long, they wouldn't come back in until the morning. But it was an experience of time for me, living in England. I was so young when I left India that I'd never had that chance of knowing what it was really like to be a colonial and to live like a colonial. Your life is not the same as living in a city. You had to be careful. You walked around with a gun all the time, and you had dogs all the time, and it was just so different. But when we went out, we had to carry a big stick because of the snakes, and sometimes you'd go in the path, and the pythons would be curled up fast asleep. It was hard to wake. It would be very hard to wake them. You'd have to really poke them to wake them up, because once they go into their summer or their fall, they'll probably sleep like that for weeks, and they wouldn't wake up unless they were disturbed, and then they'd fall away. Good, hopefully. Not kill you. But we saw them, by the side of the paths, and in the. Do you have a photograph of them?
Here,
Yes.
I have it here, but this is a TL that explains our.
Yeah, oh, you've got it. Yeah. But in there you see where we're walking through and you carry a big stick and you keep banging it and hitting it as you walk. Life is different, and we don't realize this, but they live. We don't, we don't live. We wake up in the morning, I get so disgusted, especially when I was doing this. I said, when I was in South Africa, I really lived every minute of the day. And I don't do that anymore. I wander through my life and I'm saying, why am I doing this? I want to go back there. And so, anyway, it'll probably all go away for me because this will be over and so on and so forth. But this is what my husband was involved in, is the tea tasting. And they have, when you've got all these men around, that depends, their taste, just their taste buds depend on whether you like Lipton's tea or red rose tea or Chase and Sanborn tea or how many other teas there are?
Bigelow.
Umpteen
You
thousand.
got Bigelow.
Bromley's tea.
Earl
Bromley's tea,
Grey.
which is,
Earl- well,
that's my favorite tea because it comes from England. They really have good tea over there. And there's thousands of them. And we don't see that many on the shelves anymore. But tea is a beverage that will probably be with us for the next 1,000 years, if the world lives to be the next 1,000 years. But the next time you drink a cup of tea, just know that you're drinking God's oldest beverage that He gave us.